Okay. Hey, welcome to Cartoon Brews podcast live stream. My name is Amelie. I'm
Yeah.
the editor in chief, and you're
I'm Cold the Lady. I'm I'm the video producer. Gosh, I forgot my title for a second. Thank you.
boy. We are having crazy technical difficulties today. It's like you set up this
Yeah.
beautiful new format, and my microphone stopped working,
Mhm.
and now we could barely hear each other in the minutes leading up to this. So it's always something when you're dealing with tech. It's not smooth and easy like animation production is. There's always
I wonder how delayed I am as well. I'm going to be curious about that because I can't. I don't know. I can't predict that. Hopefully, not too delayed at all.
Can you hear me
Um,
right now?
yeah, totally.
Okay. Okay. I think we're
Yeah,
on the same page. So hey, welcome back. You were at Annecy all of last week, and
I was.
that's the big animation festival that
Mm.
that is where everyone goes for the week. Over 18,000 attendees this year, another record for the event. Did it feel any bigger than last year? I honestly didn't think it'd get any bigger than last year. Last year was 17,000 some odd people, and I thought it was insane. And this year it's
Mm.
even bigger. Can the city even support that many people? I don't know. What do you think?
It's funny. You famously wrote an article last year after your time in Annecy, pointing out some very clear flaws with the systems, and then perhaps one less fair, less fair flaw with the system in terms of when you got sick. But I've got to say, it felt bigger. Yeah, it felt like there was a lot more people. It was a nightmare trying to book anything. Everything was instantly sold out, like very, very quickly. Um, and it just, I mean, people got what they wanted to see for sure. There was a lot of people who got things, and I know the Annecy website crashed when people were originally trying to book stuff, but a few people snuck in and
It crashes every
managed to
year.
like it crashes every year. There's just such a huge demand. But the thing is, it's like they're trying to they're trying to well, there's only limited seats, right? There's only so many people you can fit in Bonlieu, and that's where all the big events are, and everyone wants to get in for these panels. So of course it's going to be a scrap, and the best way to get past that is for people they set alarms on their phones, and they're there as soon as the tickets are released. They are just there, clicking in, getting ready to um, sign up for stuff. But that means that if you forget, if you forget to do that, you have no hope in getting into this other stuff. It is just insane, and with the volume of people there, it's very, very hard to get into things. Now, the good news is, if you want to see things, there's multiple screenings generally. But for any work in progress or any screening events, I mean, you're having a really tough time. I had a tough time. I had a very tough time. But it definitely was bigger for sure. It felt bigger, definitely. Yeah.
You know what's
And
funny is
bizarrely, well,
go
sorry, bizarrely, they also the town of Annecy or the city of Annecy also had a volleyball tournament for like the first 2 or 3 days of the festival. It was happening at the exact same time. Um, so it was, it was just, there was people everywhere.
You know what's funny is they didn't redesign, but they kind of modernized the Bonlieu, which is the main theater where they show everything.
Mm,
And
mm,
because of that redesign, they added new seats, and it actually reduced the number of seats that were available in that theater. Now it's like down to 925. I do believe it was larger before, but it's actually like a smaller theater now, which is you can't do anything about it, but it is what it is.
mm.
This is I brought up that article you mentioned, and the only reason I brought it up is
Yes.
because it's received probably more feedback than anything we've written in the last year. Everywhere I go, people want to talk about this article,
Yeah.
and I know they were not happy with the piece either. But it's kind of like when you're the largest festival in the world, you have to you have to take a little bit of criticism sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't meant to go like, oh, Annecy's awful. It's just the reality of what it is. And I think my biggest complaint of all was that they're a victim of their own success.
Hmm.
Is
Hmm.
they really need to separate those two events, MIFA, which is the
Yeah.
business marketplace, and the festival. They need to put them
Hmm.
back to back, like maybe on two separate weeks in June. But when you
Mm.
have that many people in that small of a space, and the city's not small. The venues are simply not enough to accommodate. And this is a problem you have with like San Diego Comic Con as well.
Mm.
I went to Comic Con in San Diego all through the 90s and 2000s, and I stopped going in 2000. I think the last year I went was 2007, simply because it had gotten too large for the amount of people that were there. And, and
Mm,
they have actually much bigger spaces. The grand halls in San Diego Comic Con, they can hold 4,000 people when they're doing the Marvel previews and whatnot. So 4,000 is appropriate for the amount of people that go there, which is, over 100,000 people. Annecy, 18,000 people, so you got 900 seats for your big theater. I mean, that kind of makes sense, but it is now the Comic Con of the animation industry. And we see
mm,
that mostly through the announcements that are made there. Announcements that used to be held for Comic Con in July have now, been, in the animation world, have now been pushed forward to June, or I guess pushed back. I don't know. They're forward on their, I don't know, but they're sooner on the calendar nowadays, right?
yeah,
The big
yeah.
announcements that used to be like, we got a new film coming out, here's a preview of whatever film's coming out. Those announcements are now made at Annecy instead of Comic Con. So it's great
Mm,
for us. I would rather it be at Annecy than I would in San Diego, because San Diego, you're competing with live action, you're competing with television shows, you're competing with also video games, toys, you're competing with everything. Now we have our own dedicated venue. So, you got to weigh it. I didn't go this year because I just,
mm.
last year was kind of like the final straw for me. I was like, I don't need this. But everybody that went, was posting about what a great time they had. And I'm sure it's still
Mm.
a good
Yeah,
time
no, it's
for a lot
amazing.
of
It is
people.
amazing. I think it's just because, and it's the way I always say it is like it's just everyone's there, right? Everyone is there. So, and the place is not big enough to hide loads of people. You're gonna bump into the people you want to talk to eventually at something. I remember taking a stroll from MIFA all the way down to Bonlieu with Aaron Blaze. We were just talking, and of course,
Mm-hmm.
like you're walking down that long. There's a big long stretch of footpath. There's cyclists. There's people all along the kind of top of the lakeside. And would typically take you about 10 minutes to walk. If you're walking with anyone of any known repute, it takes about an hour. Because there's so many students and so many people are stopping and talking, and um, it's lovely to see, because that's to me what the festival really is all about. I know there's awards, I know there's competition, I know there's prizes, and there's the celebration of the industry, but just by the sheer virtue of being there, I think that's the real magic of it. Is the fact that if you go, there's very likely that you're going to meet someone that you actually want to interact with, or there's some kind of hero of yours in there for sure.
Were you able to see any films or meet anybody I know you said Aaron Blaze right now, but were you able to
Mhm.
meet anybody that you really wanted to meet or see anything that you really wanted to see?
Yeah, my favorite, the one that stood out most to me was Little Amelie, for sure. That was a
Really?
beautiful, yeah. Oh my gosh, that was such a beautiful film. 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, whatever it needs to be given. It just was a stunning uh, study of like this little girl's early life with an adult perspective put in, but it just looks so beautiful as well. The kind of technical things they were able to achieve in that film, which are really, really subtle, are so beautiful. And on top of that, you have a very wonderful, impactful story that doesn't pull any punches, right? There's I don't know if I should say this given away, but there's a moment in the film where a character is having a flashback of basically going through, because it's about Belgian family in that are in Japan. One of the characters is having a flashback of like um, the war basically happening, and you keep thinking, okay, it's going to cut to a flashback. Okay, you've got steam rising out of a pot, and you think here's a perfect moment for it to cut to like the battlefield or whatever they saw. Never does. The metaphor is so perfectly spoken about. She's talking about how I was digging through um, ground, and I was digging through rubble to find my family, and it cuts to her digging up rice. So it's like using the cooking metaphor at the exact same time, and that's only a small part of the film. So that's how strong and how deep this film is. Um, I know the guys that worked in it worked with Remy Chaillet on his stuff, like Long Way North and Calamity Jane, and you can
Calamity
see that
Jane.
this is the next evolution of that style. Like it, those films walk, so this one could run. It's just phenomenal. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Mm.
that's one, and I should mention that G Kids picked it up out of Annecy. They've kind of pulled back a little bit, I would say, on
Mm.
picking up European animated films. They've moved mostly to Asian films now. It's not entirely true. They still pick up European films, but if
Mm.
you look at their output from the early years, they were mostly distributing European films,
Hmm.
with some films from Asia on the side. And now the balance has shifted in the other direction. However, they did pick up Little Amelie, so they're still picking up
Mm.
European animation, even though they were acquired by Toho. So,
Yeah.
that's meaning that we're going to be able to see this in the U.S. At some point. We actually have an interview with the directors of the film too, Lian Chohan and
Mm.
Melis Valade, on Cartoon Brew. So people should definitely
Mhm.
check that out as well. I really want to see that film came out at Cannes
Mm.
in a special screening. It wasn't in competition, but it was one of the three animated features there. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
certainly one that's on the radar now. I think for
Hmm.
uh, for end of year consideration. Having said that, I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about the film. A lot of people didn't
Mm.
like it as much as you did. So
I
it's an
loved it. Yeah.
interesting title. That's great. I'm
Mm.
happy to hear
Yeah.
it was a
And I
strong
was sitting
film.
in a row of people who loved it as well. Like it was just kind of a flat down. I don't think I'd spoken to anyone who didn't like it. I actually, that I haven't. So if that person is in watching this, put your comment in right now, and so I can disagree with you. You know.
No, I don't even remember where I read it, but maybe it was somewhere online,
Absolute,
obviously.
yeah,
But there were some
absolute
mixed
liar.
reviews on the film.
Yeah.
It was one of the official reviews, like one of the people who was a reviewer who was talking about the film. But right,
It was probably me.
did you
I didn't get to see
see
Argo. You were about to ask
no.
about Argo. No, I
Yeah,
didn't get to see
you
that,
didn't see Argo.
unfortunately. No,
Mm,
I just couldn't. It was just so blasted, sold out. And the one screening I did manage to get was just so early in the morning that I was just, because when you're at Annecy, you're out until 2 a.m. nearly every night, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And then they've opened up early morning screenings, which I think is a great thing. Um, but I I set way too many too early in the morning, and that was the one that I missed. It was just I totally overslept and I missed my slot. But here's another flaw in the system: is when I went to try and rebook it, it said that I already had a booking of that type. So even though it had
mm,
passed by, it wouldn't allow me to book it again for the future. It's like it had remembered that I booked something, and even though, like, because slots will open, if you just spend a minute refreshing the page, a slot, you'll probably find a slot. But I couldn't book it because it was just like, you've already seen this,
right.
which I
Well,
think is a flaw for sure.
that's not a flaw. You get one chance, right, at a festival to see
Okay, well,
something.
to me, that's my, it's a problem if the time has already passed, right? And I get it, multiple bookings, but there should be some kind of way to be like, I actually didn't get to see it, and now I'd like to try it again. But again, look, that's just
In the
me. This
past,
is,
in the, so in the past though, you used to be able to return a ticket ahead of the
mhm,
screening. So
yeah.
that's technically what you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
If you're not going, you
I was
say like
asleep.
you
I was
give up the
asleep.
ticket,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I was asleep. I totally was asleep. I had no
How early
chance.
was it?
It's like 8:30 a.m.
Oh my
So
God. I have a rule
yeah.
where I don't see films until the afternoon, which is hard at festivals. Sometimes I make an
Mm,
exception at a festival, but like here in LA, like there's press screenings sometimes at like 10, 11 a.m. And I'm like, I'm not going to that, right? Because
yes. Yes.
my brain isn't in the mood to watch films that early in the morning. 8:30 a.m. I've never seen a film at that time of day.
Mm, mm,
That's just not. And I'm sure some people. but here's the thing: some people are early risers, some people are late risers,
Yes.
right? So
Hmm.
it's perfectly fine if you're up at 5 a.m. and you're fresh, but I'm not going to see a film before noon. So
Mm.
that blocks out a lot of
Yeah.
Annecy for me.
Most fantasy. But I like the idea if you're able to get into that gear, and because it opens up more slots, there's more availability for people to watch stuff as well, which is really important, you know.
Yeah,
Um, it was good. I mean, it was a very good year. There was a lot of discussion. There was a lot of interest. I got to see some shorts, which is always good, and it's interesting to see who picks up what, you know, after the festival for sure. Like what Mew have their eyes on. I mean, they already had some stuff in there, and then also, like you said, G Kids picked up Little Amelie like that, you know.
they picked up a record of 4 films out of Annecy
Mm.
this year. And
Wow.
where's that story about G Kids' acquisitions? There we go. Right, they picked up All You Need Is Kill, which
Mhm.
I've heard
I've heard,
amazing
yeah,
things about.
yeah,
Another World, which I don't know much about. Chow, which is
yeah.
a
Mhm.
Studio 4C film, and I've heard really good things about that one as well.
Yeah,
And Little
yeah.
Amelie. So they picked up
Mhm.
3 films from Asia, one from France, but they were active. This is a record for them this year, and clearly they're viewing some of these probably as year-end contenders. I mean, they're obviously going to enter all of them, but I don't know which one they're. Usually, what happens with the
Mhm.
distributors, big studio and small studio, is they'll release multiple films a year, but they
Mhm.
choose 1 or 2 films ahead of time that they think have the best shot at awards. And those are the films that they push hardest. And a lot of that is based just on the reactions to the releases or how they feel about each film. I can't tell from this list which film they feel most strongly about, but I'm sure they'll
Mhm.
pick 1 or 2. And I know they have other films coming out too this year, like the next feature from the Our Sound guy. He's got a new
Mhm.
film, I think a sports related film. So they're very active this year, and I'm curious what they're going to choose at the end of the year.
Mhm. Mhm.
Did you
That's
hear
curious as
anything
well.
about did you hear anything about Sylvan Chomet's new film? That's the film that I thought people were going to be talking about out of Annecy, and I did not hear much discussion at
No, I
all
didn't
about
hear.
that.
Yeah. Very little. I don't think anyone was really talking about it, you know, in the groups. It was mainly Arco, Little Emily, and some films like you were talking about, All You Need Is Kill, and um, the Sylvan Chomet, A Magnificent Life. Uh, I saw it. I thought it was good. You know, I
Oh,
did
you
think
did
it
see
was.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I thought it was good. I really enjoyed it. But nobody was really talking about it. You know, I don't know.
that's
I don't know
amazing.
why. Yeah, I'm not sure why, you know. But I also felt like, you know, on the ground, I didn't feel like he had much of a presence at the festival in terms of it. You know what I mean? I don't know how, because other people, they're very present, they're kind of pushing around. Now, it might be that he just didn't interact with my circle, you know, which is not a huge circle, but you kind of hear things or you talk to people. And when I go to Annecy, generally I hang out with all the other journalists as well, you know, so it's just a big group of us. And even they weren't really talking too much about it. It was very difficult to get interviews with them as well, you know. It was very hard. I know a few people had some difficulties. So I'm not sure what the story was with that, you know. But I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was a lovely film.
Sylvan Chomet is one of those interesting characters. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously we know him for Triplets of Belleville, which I think
Yes.
is his kind of great work. But
Mm.
among fans and among animation viewers, he has a certain reputation. And
Mhm.
then if you've ever worked with him, he has a totally different reputation. And
Mm.
Sylvan Chomet's stories are like if you've ever worked with Sylvan Chomet, the first thing I ask you is, what's your story? And you will hear like the most insane stories that you've ever heard, and certainly his reputation again is it's very different critically and with fans and
Mm.
with those who have actually worked with them. So I don't know why I'm pointing that out, but I'm saying I think at some point that may catch up with them, right? And
Mm.
this might be the film, that it finally catches up. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll
But
see. We will see.
certainly in a year when there's so few studio features, you
Mm.
would have to assume that this film would have been one of the key films that people would be talking about. It had a special
For
screening
sure.
at Cannes, one of three
Mhm.
films along with Arco and Little Amelie, and then it had the big Annecy kind of launch as well. And
Mm.
yet I've heard almost nothing about the film, like nothing from people who've seen it, and it's just absolutely bizarre what's
Mm.
going on with the kind of the talk around this film. On the other hand, you have Arco, which is to me like it's shaping up to be a big. It has so much momentum, starting with
Mhm.
the fact that Natalie Portman's production company picked up the film as
Mm.
producer, and then Neon in the U.S., which released two previous Oscar nominees, Flea and Robot Dreams. They've also picked up the film for distribution. So it has Natalie Portman behind it. It has Neon, the beloved distributor Neon behind it.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
everyone is talking about that film. So
Yeah,
it's going to be
everyone.
very interesting as we head towards the end of the year. How these films will play out. What
Mm.
else? What else from Annecy? Do you have anything else to report?
No, not much. The shorts were great as always. It was interesting because the opening ceremony, instead of a feature, it featured shorts one as its like presentation, right? So it showed five shorts, and basically the shorts one program as part of the opening ceremony, which was lovely. And they got each person up to introduce their film, basically. Um, got very political very quickly, as I'm sure you've heard.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very interesting because then you've this kind of case where the revelation as to how Annecy functions is kind of put on display when they were talking about the Star Wars Visions episode that Shinyo Hira directed. Marcel basically says he's the artistic director of the festival, Marcel Jean. He said that when he was in Lucasfilm, he saw the short and he was just like, that I want that in Annecy, you know. I want that shown at Annecy this year. So I'm not sure what kind of selection process it went through, apart from just I want that there in the shorts program it was shown. Now, is it technically brilliant film? It's really amazing. Some of the best technical animation you'll ever see in your life. It's insane. Like hand drawn, just the stuff he can push. This legendary Japanese animator who's worked on incredible shows. The opening sequence for The Boy and the Heron. That's all his loose kind of hand drawn style. But it was interesting. You start to see the layers of the festival unveil itself through that opening ceremony. It was really just like, okay, here's the politics, here's the behind the scenes directorial politics, here's the selection process, and yeah, it was very interesting. That to me kind of stood out the most.
I think it's fantastic that they started this year with shorts because I
Yeah.
don't think they've ever done that before. And I always feel like even right now when we're talking about it, there's a much bigger emphasis on features than there is
Hmm.
shorts. And
For sure.
Annecy,
Yeah.
when it started in 1960, there were no features. It's a short.
Mm.
It was short animation. That was what the art form was in terms of independent production and European production at the time. There were some features, of course, but it was you would go to Annecy to see the shorts, and I like that
Hmm.
they're going back to their roots and emphasizing the shorts because I feel they often get overlooked. And a big reason for
Yeah.
that is because there's dozens of them, and they're
Hmm.
hard to see. Oftentimes you see them
Yeah.
like 2 3 years later when they come online or you see them at different festivals, but it's hard to talk about shorts. I mean that's just the
Yeah.
reality
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
it. But another point you mentioned, which is that the festival director said he liked it, he wants this in the festival. That's really how artistic director at a film festival works. I always say
Works.
that an
Yeah.
animation festival is only as good as its artistic director because it's their subjective choice. Obviously, he has to put it in front of a committee. There's usually multiple people selecting films, but if the festival director says, I really want something in there, there's a 99% chance that it's going to show. So it is really Marcel Jean's taste to a
Hmm.
large extent, and that's a good thing. You need curation, but that's
Mm.
why you also go to different festivals. You can go to 20 different festivals, and some festivals you go to, and the selection is awful. And then you meet the festival director, and you go, "Oh, okay, well that's why it's because they just don't have taste, right?"
Mm.
but it is an animation festival is only as good as its artistic director,
Mm.
and just like and the same is true for like a film distribution company, right? Like they curate what they release. Not the big studios. The big studios have a different system, but I'm talking like more independent film distribution companies.
Mm.
G Kids is the taste of a couple people who run that company, right? There's about two or
Mm.
three people who make the decisions. It's not like some huge organization that decides this is the animated film that we're going to promote. It's personal taste. It's subjective personal taste,
Mm.
and thankfully in animation we do have a lot of good people promoting good films, and we should be thankful for
Yeah.
that. So
And
so
and
right.
you know, what I like the most about that kind of thing is I feel like they do act on criticism, right? I feel like they take this stuff on board. Like opening shorts is a big thing, right? It goes to show that they're not just pandering to feature audiences, whatever. I can't recall any year that I've ever been there that they've opened the big Pixar film as the opening thing. It's never the case, right? It's always something else. Like this year, obviously shorts, but the year before, I think it was Sirocco. I think that was the opening one. Maybe that was 2 years ago. But also, they really try to just expand as many programs as possible to kind of fit stuff in, like the WTF, like that whole program part, like that's a big part for the festival as well. Marcel will introduce that as part of the screening, and they're kind of bizarre, strange, little adult oriented shorts. So there's space for really everything at NC, right? There really is, and that's what I quite like about the whole thing is it's like whatever you want, you will get out of the festival if you have a plan and you attack it from that plan. Some people they might go and they're just like, this year I'm not going to see anything. I just want to spend time with people and meet people and network. Other years, people are going to be like, I'm only seeing things this year. I'm not interested in networking. Or they might just go, I'm only going to MIFA. But again, you can't do all of them. You'd be run ragged trying to do everything. You'd have a day for each thing nearly. But if you attack a very specific thing, that's it. But the sad thing is, that's also it for the year. That's it for the year. You have to wait next year until you switch to your marketing side. I mean, this year for me was a lot more seeing things and talking to people as opposed to what I've done every other year, which is interview whatever big thing is happening.
Yeah, I mean the bottom line is I still, when we talk about Annecy, I still recommend people go to the festival. I'm not going
For
right
sure.
now because I'm just not, it's not for me at this moment in my
Yeah.
life, but it's still an amazing festival. It's still an amazing gathering of
Mm.
some of the greatest animation talent in the contemporary animation world coming together
Mm.
in one place for 1 week to share craft and art and discussion. So it's still a wonderful place, and you can't fault it
Yeah.
for
And
its own
and let me
growth.
and let me tell you, I mean, everyone was talking about your article.
No,
Every- everyone was talking about it, so it rang true. It rang
well, we
true.
didn't we didn't even talk about the this other article. Somebody went there this year, and they
Mm.
had a big criticism on the MIFA side, which is there's tons of schools there, but no one's
Mhm.
recruiting. And what message are we sending to the animation community by having such heavy promotion of education with very little entryway into the industry after you
Mm.
graduate? And the person who wrote that article, it's behind a paywall, but you can still, you can find a way to read it. And he has some wonderful suggestions for what festivals like Annecy can do to
Mm.
kind of alleviate this situation. And certainly Annecy has to take the lead on it because they are now the foremost animation event in the world. And change starts with when bigger companies, bigger organizations, now they're a government organization, but nonetheless, change starts at the top. Annecy is the one
Mm.
that needs to make these changes, and that's why we wrote about this article, is because they do need to take to heart some of these suggestions that are being made. There's a real imbalance there right now of schools taking in students because it's profitable for them, and not really much for the students to look forward to once they graduate. So that's
Mm.
certainly going to be it. I'm really glad this person wrote this article because it starts the discussion, but it doesn't end here.
Mm.
It's still a discussion
Mm.
that's ongoing. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to another topic. I think
Well,
we
yeah,
we
I was
still
about
have
to
one
ask you a
more.
question. Yeah, yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
I was
Go
about
ahead.
to ask you a question, which is part of the. And no, it's too big. It's too big a question. I'll throw it out there, but feel no need to answer this. Um, which is the idea is like our college is there to train people to work, right? Is that the purpose of a college education? Is it to ready you for the workforce? Is that the only reason a college is there? Anyways, that's just my 2 cents. I think my answer is a bit nuanced. It's not just like in the question, but I think that should be definitely part of any discussion when you think about this stuff.
I mean, certainly there's different types of
Yeah.
schools too. Like there's RISD in the U.S., Rhode Island School of Design. There's La Poudrière in
Mm.
France, and these schools teach filmmaking. But the students who attend the programs, and a lot of them move into the industry, obviously, but a lot of them attend with the idea that they're learning how to become filmmakers, and they're not necessarily looking for a pathway into the industry. I think the
Mm.
problem with Annecy is that a lot of the schools there are industry oriented. They are training you for the industry, and they're promoting this dream that, once you go to our school, you're going to have the tools to enter the industry. But the reality right now is very different. There's a huge
Mm.
transformation happening in animation right now with technology, and a lot of these people who are going to these schools more than you know a few years ago are going
Mhm.
to end up not working in the industry, or they're not going to have the right education to find a space. So I think a lot of, and this is a hard thing to put on a younger person, is
Mm.
what is your goal, ambition? Is it to be like some independent filmmaker and experiment with the possibilities of film, or is it to be, a working artist in the business? And you have to choose the right school to go to. And there's just not a lot of right now. I mean, there's still a lot of good schools, but most of them
Mm.
are not preparing students for the reality that exists beyond school. So that's kind of my
Mm.
short answer to the
Yeah,
question.
very sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but let's
Anyways,
move
let's
on.
move on.
Yeah. So we had the big announcement out of Annecy this year, which is we're past Annecy, but it's still kind of related to Annecy, is that Pixar announced a new original feature that's coming out
Mm.
called Gatto, and this is coming out in what year is it coming out in? 2027? Is that it?
I think
Yes,
so.
it's going to
Yeah.
premiere in summer 2027. And the reason this is important is because Pixar, three of their next four films are completely original features. They have
Mm.
Hoppers coming out next year. They have Gatto, and today they have Elio coming out. So they
Mm.
are one of the few studios in Hollywood that is continuing to produce original features. Almost every studio now has shifted to franchise films. They've shifted to IP driven, where they're adapting existing media from other formats like children's books. So
Mm.
it's very commendable that Pixar is continuing to produce original films. What's even more unique is that today we have the release of two original animated features. One is on Netflix. It's K-pop Demon Hunters, and we have Pixar's Elio. And this is rare. It's so rare that this year, out of the major studios, the five major studios, not counting streaming, of course, Netflix, but the five major theatrical studios, there's only four films that are coming out, and only one of them is a completely original feature, Elio. Today is the only day of the
Mm.
year that you're going to see a completely original feature released by Hollywood in a movie theater. And so
Mm.
that's something that I just wanted to highlight because I think uh, it's an important accomplishment that some
Yeah.
studio is still doing that. Now we did a survey on Cartoon Brew of what we think the opening box office is going to be. So let's
Okay,
see
here we
how
go.
let's see how correct people are. The number one guess right now is that it's going to be under 25 million. If that
Mm.
happens, that is going to be the worst opening theatrically for a Pixar film ever. And it's this new reality that we've entered where original animation suddenly has become a very tough sell for Hollywood studios. Now, a lot of people here, readers, are saying it's going to open under 25 million, but we also have the data from the early release of Elio, and we can take a look at what Deadline is reporting right now.
Mm.
Um, let's go through this. Wednesday and Thursday previews did $3 million for Elio. Hang on, I've sound popped up. And they are predicting for Elio. What was the number? Let's see. Um, so Deadline is saying that they're going to open with between 20 to 25 million. So it seems like Cartoon Brew readers are certainly on target with what the film is
Mm.
currently, what the trajectory of the film currently is. Now the silver lining to this is that Elemental in 2023 opened really bad as well. It
Mm.
opened at $29.5 million, which was the second lowest opening after Toy Story, which came out in 1995. And that was a totally different era. And, the 1995 dollars can't really be compared to nowadays. But and that was the first film that they ever made. So that was before they were, Pixar, right? That
Yeah.
was that was their entry point. Now the silver lining though is that it had an amazing multiple of five times its opening. And most films have a multiple of they gross about three times as much as their opening weekend. And Elemental had amazing legs. So that the hope for Pixar here is that this is going to be like an older film. It's going to be a slow burn where people discover it, they go to the theater, word of mouth drives this film. So even if it has
Mm.
a low opening, this film still has great potential because the film has been well reviewed. A lot of people like the film, and there's still hope for it. And I think Elemental is the clearest example. Not only was it had a great multiple in the U.S., but it was a huge hit in a lot of different countries. Like this story that we did was about Korea. It was the number one film in Korea for 3 straight weeks,
Mhm. Mm.
and so we have to kind of the world has changed in terms of launching a completely original idea. People are so used to seeing something from a franchise that they're not used to going to the theater to see a completely new experience with completely new characters and a storyline that people want familiarity. They don't want to see something that they don't, know anything about. And that's just kind of the way culture has shifted in the last decade. Anyway,
Mm.
that's my opening statement on Elio.
I'm so curious about Elio because the the original trailer posited such a different story to the final trailer. It seemed to be like this kid who was reluctantly, accidentally abducted, and then the final trailer shows him that he's like, "I really want to be abducted by aliens." So you can see even between that, like, there's a huge shift in the character as to what's changed, and I'm not sure how much marketing weight Pixar put behind Ilio. You mean it's around, it's there, but I'm withholding judgment until I see it because if it has the hallmarks of a film that had a troubled production that had a release date and we just need to hit that release date, I'd be very sad. Like I hope that it's a good, strong, original story that holds itself, amongst Pixar is great because Pixar, the storytellers are great, and I really admire what people like Pete Docter and the rest of Pixar are doing, which is we'll do the sequels and we'll get the money, and but we're also developing new talent and new voices coming up through the studio as well, which is really what studios should be doing to avoid becoming caricatures of themselves, right? So, I'm big fan of what they're doing, and I hope they continue to do it. I'm just really, really curious about it. Like Elio, you said. I'd say Elio. Elio. Yeah.
And
I don't
and yeah, I
the
mean
nick.
that's one of the problems. You don't know how to pronounce the title. It's like
I will
I mean,
figure it out. Yeah.
no, no, not you. I'm saying in
Yeah.
general, no one knows how to pronounce the title. That's kind of an issue. So, but no,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's funny you mentioned it had a troubled production because that's kind of a joke now at Pixar. Every film has a troubled production at
Mm,
Pixar.
mm,
They have a they have a weird system of production where they don't lock story and in feature animation you never lock story, right? You're making it
mm,
until the very end. But here, like they're in most of their films, they don't even know like what they're about until like the last year or so of making it. They make
mm,
such huge changes. Now, in this particular case, this film has three directors. The original director was Adrian Molina, who was a
mhm.
co-director of Coco, and it was a
Yeah.
very personal story for him. But at some
Mm,
point, I think we did a story on it. They took him off the production, and they put they don't want to say they took him off the production. He's still listed as a director, and it's still his concept. But they
mm,
did take him off the production, and they brought on Domi Shi, who did Turning Red, and who's like one of the main
mm,
creative forces at the studio, and Madeline Sharafian, who did the short. I want to say it's Burrow, if I'm not mistaken.
mm,
But they brought on two more directors, and I won't get into why. I've heard a lot of different things about why they took this shift in directors, but it's had it's very rare to have a film with three directors on it. The Spider Verse films have those, but those are by design because they're such
yes.
complex
Yeah.
films. This film has three directors because of a very late change in
Mm,
direction on the film, and one of the problems with when you have shifts like this is I think back to Brave, where it was, Brenda Chapman and then Mark Andrews came on, and you essentially had two different films in that case. You could see
mm,
one film that Brenda Chapman was making, and then you could see where they decided, oh, we need to make this more exciting and add more action. And it's a very kind of confused film because
mm,
it's two different directors with competing visions. I haven't heard that about Elio. I do feel like they tried to the new directors tried to retain what was there And I don't
Mm,
know what changes they made. I haven't spoken to enough people yet to understand like how the story direction shifted. But that's it's going to be interesting. I mean, every film, every Pixar film nowadays has kind of a crazy backstory,
yeah.
and this film is no different.
But
But
then
we'll
you
see.
hear things like Win or Lose, right? The TV series, which is, people love that. People are saying what a masterpiece that is, and that had two directors on it. And I remember we spoke to them. Gosh, it must have been 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago at Annecy, and I was always so curious to see what they produced, but it was just held back and held back and held back. And I was just like, oh my God, what's happening with this? Why is this being held back? And then all of a sudden they launched this TV series that people just weren't ready for. They were just like, this is incredible. If this is the stuff that they're putting out in Pixar, then everyone's hoping that it'll come back to that, especially with Elio here. I'm going to take Elio. You can take Elio.
Well,
Okay.
I haven't even thought. I don't think I've ever said it out loud. Did I? I think I said it earlier. What did I say? Elio?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Elio,
Yeah.
is that what I said? Right. No, I mean, the thing with Win or Lose is it was delayed not because of problems with the production, though. That was delayed because of problems at the larger Disney company and a shift in streaming strategy. And I think that was, and also that's one of the things is when you're doing like something completely new at a studio, they're often not looking as, I don't think that was like some huge priority project. So I think they got away with a little bit more. They could kind of experiment and do things without people looking over their shoulder the whole time. You're breaking up. I can't hear you now.
Hello.
There you go.
Um, I was saying that's. I think to me that's what people want, or at least that's what I want. Which is like I don't mind experiments. I don't mind that at all. I much prefer something like there was a moment in Little Amelie where I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe they're going to do this. I cannot believe they're going to do this. Um, and that's the kind of stuff that you want from a story. I don't mind a story like having a predictable ending as long as I'm surprised getting there, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and that's the kind of loss when it comes to, I would say, Western style storytelling, which is very locked into the hero's journey and hitting certain beats and being predictable, right? And maybe it's a limitation of being some kind of critical mind when it comes to animation or storytelling, that you can see the patterns form before you watch the as it's ongoing, right? Which is a total limitation. So I always try to watch things like a kid, which is just like as if I've seen this story for the first time ever. But it's impossible after a certain period. But anyways, I don't know why I started ranting on about this, but the
Well, let's take a question
bring
here.
me back, Amelie.
Some
Bring me
No,
back.
it's great. I agree with you. I mean, Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's driven by. It's so funny. This person just commented, "Save the Cat." I was literally just going to say, like everyone in Hollywood, they've read Save the Cat. They're trying to,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they're following the same old patterns, and part of it is because that's what the studios want. They want what works.
Hmm.
They say,
Yeah.
make us this. This was successful before. Here's the comp. We want this, right? So that's what Hollywood
Mm.
does. But the previous question by Marici was, did Luca do really well? Well, if we remember, Luca was one of the films that went direct to streaming, and it
Yeah.
clearly did well enough for Enrico Casarosa, the director, to get a second film, Gatto, which
Yeah.
is there coming out in
Yeah.
2027. So I mean that's kind of the clearest answer. Did it do well?
Mm.
They liked it. I know it did really well on streaming. It was viewed quite a lot. But again, when a film goes on streaming, you never really know how it does. I mean, you get metrics, but
Yeah.
in terms of the cultural impact that it has, you often and this brings us to our next film too, which is K-pop Demon Hunters, the other
Mm.
original film opening today. It's from Sony Pictures Animation, directed by Maggie Kang and Chris Applehans. And this is the clearest
Hmm.
indication. Oh, it has a higher rating than Elio, but there's only 12 reviews. Only
Yeah.
12 reviewers have reviewed this original animated feature, major film that's coming out. If this was coming out theatrically by Sony, it would have 80, 90 reviews. Look at Elio, 112 reviews. K-pop
Mm,
Demon Hunters has 12 reviews. The metrics for streaming are completely different than the metrics
mm,
for a theatrical release. Now, K-pop Demon Hunters, I don't know the history of whether it was originally intended for theatrical release, but having seen the film, I think they made a very good decision to send it to streaming. And the reason for that
mm,
is because it's very much a genre film. If you're into
mm,
K-pop, you're going to really get into this film. You're going to it's going to have a huge fan base. There's going to be tons of fan art. People are going to talk about it online, but I personally believe it would not have made much of an impact had they released it theatrically. Because
mm,
it's a tough sell. It's like K-pop. It's a huge musical genre, but it's still a niche musical genre. You're not going to get most of Middle America to go to a film with about music from Korea, right? And the film's
mm.
not about music from Korea, but that's certainly a big you have to
The
be into
title.
K-pop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you have to be into K-pop to kind of appreciate this film. So I think Netflix, it's obviously the right decision to send this to streaming, but it's not going to be as much talked about as Elio, and you can see
Mm,
that already because no one's reviewing the film. Like this is a major, uh, has a significant budget. This is a big studio film, and it
mm,
simply does not get the same reaction as a theatrical release. And that's still the value of theatrical releases. Having said that, I think, like I said, it was the right decision to send it to streaming because it's going to find more of an audience there than it would have theatrically.
mm. It's interesting, because I really like the creative voices behind K-pop Demon Hunters. Um, like I know Maggie Kang has been a storyboard artist on some really great shows and movies for a long time. But then you have someone like Chris Applehan. I really enjoyed Wish Dragon. I remember that came
Mm-hmm.
out. We interviewed him, and he's a really interesting guy. He's got a great connection to the cultures. So and also is I think he's quite good with action as well. I think he is quite good with action. I've not seen this film, but it's on my list for that reason that I like the creative voices behind it. And it is one of those things of it was Sony Pictures. No, it's a Sony Pictures film and Netflix. So it feels to me that like because I know they did Wish Dragon as well. It's more of an experimental movie for them than kind of a major mainline release, right? What would the budget be on something like this? I mean, do you know?
They haven't announced the budget, but I would say
Okay,
60 to 80 probably. I
okay,
don't
well
know.
that's still pretty big.
No,
That's still,
like I said, it's a
yeah.
major studio film. This is in terms of quality. It certainly could be on a big screen. There's nothing
Mm,
preventing it. It's simply a business decision that
yes, yeah.
Netflix picked up the film, and Sony was like, well, we're going to make more money from this film by selling it to Sony than we are trying to distribute it. Because keep in mind, if you're spending 60, 80 million dollars on a film, your P&A, your advertising budget is going to be equivalent to that. So they would have had to put in another 60 to 80 million dollars into
Mm,
promoting the film. And
yeah,
there's no guarantee that this again, I've seen it. I don't think it would have been a huge hit for them. So they
yeah.
certainly made the right decision. And
Mhm.
also Netflix, we talk about how Elio is the only completely original animated feature coming out this year. Technically, Dogman is considered an original feature. If there's a book adaptation that of an
Mm,
anime, if there's an animated adaptation of a book, Hollywood considers that original. For some purposes, we do too. But personally, I don't consider an adaptation of a book to be an original idea.
mm.
but you could argue that Dogman 2 is the other original feature this year. Anyway, my point is that
Well,
Elio
just
is
on
the
that.
only right. But let me just finish.
Yeah, yeah, you
But
finished. Sorry, yeah.
and then I'm gonna lose my train of thought if I stop. But I'm just saying, Elio is the only original feature. Netflix though has multiple original features. They have K-pop Demon Hunters, Fixed, In Your Dreams, all these films coming out. So Netflix is kind of separate from the rest of Hollywood. Sorry,
Mm.
go ahead. What were you going to say though?
That was exactly my point. Actually, you do. I don't know why I was going to interrupt you to make your own point. Um, I was going to do that. This
I
is,
apologize. I should have
no,
paused.
no, my that was my bad. I was trying to jump over you. But the speaking of, I saw Fixed in Annecy,
You
and
did.
I did, yeah. And let me tell you, it is exactly what it says on the tin. It is exactly what it says in the tin, and it was the perfect audience to watch it with. I remember speaking to Gendy afterwards and just kind of commenting on how they would just applaud, right, at certain moments, at bizarre, like really the worst debauchery and violence, and people are cheering and hollering in the audience, and you're just like, it feels very much like something you'd watch as a 14-year-old that you're not allowed to watch. Like very much the South Park movie esque kind of
Mm-hmm.
feeling to it. Um, very crude, but yeah. So I'm going to be really curious when that kind of gets its full release, what people will start making of that. I think it'll end up just being a cult film. It'll be one of those like strange, like, have you seen Fixed? You know,
So I've seen the film too, but I saw it at home with one other with one other person, my wife,
yeah,
and it it did not have the same effect. This is truly, like you say, an
yes, yeah,
audience film. This is a
mm,
mistake, and it's not Netflix's mistake. They were smart to pick it up, but this was originally a Warner Brothers New Line release. New Line is their
mhm.
kind of adult line, and they just didn't want to spend. Warner Brothers right now. They're not. You know, they just don't know what the hell they're doing. But this should have been a theatrical release because it is an
yeah,
audience film. I think my
mhm,
reaction to the film would have been completely different if I had seen it with a crowd of a couple hundred people as opposed to sitting in the dark at home and watching just an endless stream of like jokes that are not
rude
it's
joke.
not sharp
Yeah,
humor. It's not like sophisticated like Sausage Party, I think, was very sophisticated even in its crudeness, right? There was a lot of
mm,
story there. There was a lot going on. It's a dirty film, but there's a lot more layers to it. And Fixed,
mm,
there's no layers. It's just like one joke that's repeated for like 90 minutes. It's just, and it just, and what's funny is if you're going to go that far, why not go even further? Like there were so many
mm.
opportunities where they could have really gone gross and did things that you don't do, but they were also timid in their crudeness, right? So it didn't work for me very well. I'm glad it's going to be out there, but this is one of those cases where this should have been a theatrical release,
Yes,
and it's now going to Netflix. So
yeah.
and Netflix, everyone's watching it at home by themselves, and that's not the right way to
Yeah,
see this film. So they
no,
should try to
yeah,
do this is a good opportunity for Netflix actually to try to do more like theatrical screenings of this film because I think it could find, like you said, a cult audience given the
I
right
think
environment.
college, Friday night college screenings would set this film up. That's exactly who they're trying to speak to. That's exactly the right audience. I remember going to see Borat when that first came out, the college
Mhm.
audience. It's the most hysterical film I'd ever seen. Because the audience lifts it beyond a threshold of you sitting at home, kind of going, oh, that kind of thing. But I totally agree. It is it is only an audience film. That's beautiful animation. It is very well animated, and some of the strangest beautiful animation I've ever seen. But having said that, it is totally a loss for Netflix because once that if that's just sitting there on your TV. I mean, I'm not even sure I click on it, and I like Andy a lot.
Oh, it took multiple nights to finish the film because it's
Oh,
it's hard it's hard to watch
yeah,
straight through at home, right? Like you're kind of
yeah.
like,
If
okay,
you're
I
not
got the
locked in
joke,
on,
and then you gotta turn it on again to watch it. But that's but hey, kudos to Gendy for trying comedy. I think one of the things lacking in animation is just
mm,
pure comedy. We don't see
yeah,
any animated films. There's light humor where you
mm,
might chuckle or mostly I smile, but I never laugh at animated films. There were a few moments where I laughed at Fixed. So that was good. I mean, animation has, it's a comic art form at
mm,
heart. It's
yes,
the
yes,
caricature, right? And very few people take advantage of it.
mm,
K-pop Demon Hunters. There was nothing funny in that film. I think there were moments. There's fantastic expressions, but
mm,
they weren't delivered with the timing that would make it funny. So yeah, I mean, animation needs more comedy. Fixed is a great kind of experiment, and I hope it finds some kind of an audience on Netflix.
mm,
So yeah, that's it for today. If you're out there, hey, go see Elio. We need to support uh, original
yeah,
animation. That's
yeah,
a big thing. So you want to go out there opening
mm,
weekend. You want to help lift the numbers. We need more studios experimenting with original animation, and also watch K-pop Demon Hunters. I'm going to be really interesting to see what the viewership is on it. Netflix releases their weekly ratings every Tuesday, I believe, and of course this is a shortened week for Demon Hunters because it's premiering on a Friday, and the numbers will only go through Sunday. But it'll be interesting to see what reaction they get to that, and we'll be covering the box office numbers for Elio this weekend. So thank you very much, everybody, for this latest live stream. Hey, Cole, thanks for joining, and this was a good conversation. And your mic went out again, but
I need to change this cable. Um, but yeah, I hope everyone has a good weekend watching Elio or Elio.
Elio. We don't
I'll
know,
find out
but
when I
we'll
watch
figure
it. When I watch it, I'll
exactly.
figure it out.
Okay, thanks everybody. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.